The table below shows the IQ of 10 students and the number of hours of TV each watches per week. The first thing we need to do to figure out if there's a relationship between this data is plug it into our calculator and take a look at the scatter plot. In order to do this, let's decide that we're going to put IQ in list 1, that's going to be our X, and TV hours in list 2, and that's going to be our Y. The next step, now that our data is entered, is we have to see what it looks like on a scatter plot. In order to do that, remember we want to select the stat plot function, which is written in blue, so we will hit the blue button first. To graph this data, we will now use that second stat plot, bring us to this screen. We want our first plot to be on and everything else to be off. Hit enter. It is on, so I'm going to use my down arrow. I want the first scatter plot selected. It should say list 1 and list 2. If it does not say list 1 and list 2, you can change them, okay, by noticing blue is written, or L1 is written in blue, and L2 is written in blue. So you would just hit the second button and then them. Okay, I want a graph. I'm going to hit zoom. Zoom, and go all the way down to number 9, which says zoom stat, and it should give me this scatter plot. Notice I already have a line in there. I don't want that line. So go to Y equals, and hit clear, and I can go back and hit graph, and it'll give me my scatter plot. I now want to plot those points back on my worksheet. I'm now going to copy what I see on my calculator as best as possible onto my scatter plot. My X is IQ, so I'm going to label my x-axis IQ, and my Y is TV. So I'm going to make sure that I label them. I now need to create the line of best fit and then write it in spot B. Let's copy what we see on our calculator. We see Y equals AX plus B. We know that A is negative 0.17, we're going to round to the hundredths place, and B is 27.51. We're not going to use the letters Y and X because we have an application problem here. So I'm going to replace them with variables that I actually used. My Y-axis is labeled TV, so I'm going to say TV equals negative 0.17 times IQ plus 27.51. Interpret the slope and y-intercept in context. Well, A is my slope and B is my y-intercept. What do those mean? Well, the y-intercept is where your data crosses the y-axis. So that means for an IQ of 0, someone would watch 27.5 hours of TV. That seems like a lot. Really, I just plugged that 0 in here to figure out what TV would be. Slope tells me that for every increase in IQ, somebody is going to be watching 0.17 hours less of TV with every increase because it's a negative sign up here. The last question says, using your equation of the line, if someone has an IQ of 127, how many hours of TV will the model predict? Does the linear model seem appropriate to answer this question? Explain why or why not. So what I need to do is I need to plug in 127 for IQ. So I'm going to plug it in right up there. So TV equals negative 0.17 times 127 plus 27.51. Plugging that into your calculator and simplifying, you should end up with 5.92 hours of TV. That seems like a reasonable amount of hours to be watching. Last step, we have to make sure that we actually put that line on our graph in the first part. So up here on A, we need to draw what we see on our calculator screen. If you hit the graph button, your line should appear, and we want to, as accurately as possible or as close to as we can, draw that line on our scatter plot.